They focused primarily on how we can best mark this year as the centenary of the birth of Raymond Williams, the Welsh intellectual, socialist, cultural critic, educator, and political activist. Raymond Williams died in 1988, and the Raymond Williams Foundation, as part of this coalition of interested people and groups, has been focused on trying to create some new cultural outputs as part of the centenary celebrations, and to help update some of Raymond Williams's key ideas for our times. The Raymond Williams Foundation has commissioned a set of explainers, and I highly recommend looking at these, and they're still in development and emerging. And obviously the foundation has supported the development of this film. As you could see from the slides at the end, this has been supported financially by, as well as the Raymond Williams Foundation, the Arts Council of Wales, and the Lleucu Siencyn Foundation. On behalf of the collective, I'd really like to thank the Wales Millennium Centre and Festival of the Voice for their support in hosting this event. And of course, we also need to thank Colin Thomas and Tom Goddard, the filmmakers, who have produced this film together on what must be called a shoestring budget, and given tremendous energy and enthusiasm and lots of their own time doing this, and also to Kidus for the sound. Thanks also to Nick Mahoney from the Raymond Williams Foundation and Stephanie Bolt. Both of them have worked so tirelessly to ensure his legacy isn't forgotten. Diolch yn fawr. So the hope is that this film and the other creative work that emerges from the centenary can help support new creative work that builds on the legacy of Williams and supports all those others that believe that we urgently and collectively need to keep working to create a society that is more culturally democratic, less hierarchical, more equal and free. Now we have this film, one of the things we'd love to see, so please spread the word, is lots more short films made by young people living around Wales that express what culture means to them in their lives. These issues still urgently require more collective thought, debate and action, just as they did in Williams's time. Right, it's my pleasure now to introduce the panel. How are you all this evening? Brilliant. So Amber is here from Push, and Yusuf is here on behalf of Unify, and Kiara, right over there, is from Valley's Kids, and Nirushan from Butetown Matters. So croeso I chi gyd, welcome. And yes, thank you. Sadly, Gwenlly Evans couldn't be here tonight from Cwmni Bro, but I know that they send us all their best regards. So, after seeing that film and your amazing contributions, can I ask each of you, maybe start with you, Kiara, over there, what does culture mean to you?
It's really bizarre, isn't it? Because culture means so many different things to different people. But I think for myself, like culture is family, and like how you celebrate things together, how you come together to overcome adverse challenges. And it's just like there's a community within, I know that within my valley, of when something's wrong, we all come together to get it fixed. It's not just a one-person job. We don't rely on a counsellor to do it. We make sure everyone's voices are heard. And it feels like one big family. And that's certainly the case with Valley's Kids as well. I've grown up through Valley's Kids since I was 7. And their culture is very much a creative culture. It's a nurturing culture. It's a culture that is open to anyone. And yeah, I always describe my experience growing up as being a part of another family, and sometimes it's a better family. So yeah, I think for me, it's just how you get nurtured. And yeah, my definition of culture is feeling like you're a part of a family and something bigger.
That's lovely and really positive. Nirushan, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with what Kiara has just said. I think, you know, that film ended with culture is ordinary, and that's what it's all about. I think culture is part of your relationships. That's, you know, within your families, how you approach different holidays, what you celebrate, how you give each other gifts, how you learn in our community. I think that's part of culture. Not everybody, you know, interacts and gets experiences the same way. In my community especially, people go to different places to meet people, to make friends, to learn from each other and empower each other. Culture is about the food you eat, what places are around your local area. That is a very important part in my culture and the community that I live in, where food and bringing people together plays a massive role. I think, you know, we have to think of culture as not something that is dominated by the arts and theatre, but rather it's dominated by communities and people. So, you know, we are the ones that shape our stories from our experiences through change and how we sort out issues within society and our communities. That's all part of culture to me, and you know, it's led and owned by communities and individuals.
Fantastic. And Yusuf?
Okay, I probably don't have as much to say as these two, right? But I'm going to plagiarize what Lleucu said. Lleucu said in the film, culture is identity, and I really and truly believe that. And it's just who you are in. And the funny thing is that both of us have been quite fortunate to go around the UK and just to work in different communities. And the weird thing is, regardless where you go, for us, there's like touch points that just make us automatically feel comfortable, whether we're in Leeds, whether we're in Manchester, whether we're in some area of London. And it was crazy. I was in Leicester yesterday, and I'm not a big fan of the city, right? But I've only been shown the more commonplace, and like, you know, for example, Queen Street. I don't know how you'd classify Queen Street, but Queen Street is very much not what Cardiff's about, right? And I've been shown that of Leicester initially for the first couple of trips, but then somebody decided to show us the actual real part of the city, right? And it was very much reminiscent of Grange Town, Butetown, and I immediately felt comfortable. And it wasn't about the buildings, it was about the people. And for example, we spent a lot of time in this area where, well, a playground, right? But almost like half a playground, half a basketball court, half a football court, right? And just the way the kids dressed was almost identical to what you'd see here in Butetown. And it blew my mind, because I just thought to myself, like, irrespective of where you are, there's just certain characteristics of certain communities which translate wherever you are. So culture, the arts is only one aspect of culture. You know, culture is religion, is one facet of culture. You know, language, but arts is the most outward expression of it. You know, and that's what culture means to me. It's just expression and identity. You know, to steal Lleucu's answer. You know, that was his answer. That wasn't even mine, right? You know, but he nailed it. I'll pass it up to Amber. I've spoke more than both of you guys. That's okay.
So culture for me is about community and also about like progression through self-identity. So we're ever changing, and it's about sort of pushing that forward by bringing new ideas into culture. I think that's it. I think that it's really important to do that, because it allows for the intertwining of cultures as well, which I think is really important. And also it does mean family. Family's really important. Yeah, it's very short. But.
Amber, while you're there, I'll grab you for the next question, if I may. Do you think certain types of culture, so you've identified different interpretations of culture, but different types of culture get more access to resources, get valued more, or perhaps get treated more seriously?
I think that's definitely the case. Especially, I think recently a lot of big corporations have been pushing for maybe more POC creatives, or especially a lot of black creatives as opposed to other ethnicities. But I think it's really important for those who do get that opportunity to push for the ones that don't. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, you probably have more to say. Oh yeah, no, I do have more to say about that. Always. Because the funny thing about, we're living in a strange time, right? And, you know, everything moves like a pendulum. So from completely ignoring like black and brown creativity to fully embracing it with conditions, though, it's always with conditions. And what we found probably in the last 18 months, right, is anything we try to do in Wales it takes extreme amount of convincing. And even on the back of this mural, so people have just approached us and said, Yusuf, we love what you guys are doing. Da, 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 da. We want to do something that, of a similar vein. The minute we start proposing ideas, and it's only really in Wales, all right? They get extremely nervous, right? The minute we go down to M4, those conversations are like quite different. Not massively different, but quite different. And we're having like, it's almost like deja vu, some of the situations. It's like there's initial enthusiasm, and then the minute you actually go to execute whatever you're trying to do, there's like hesitation, and then some people even almost revert to like a default, like their default behavior prior this pandemic, prior this whole, you know, Black Lives Matter, which I hate that as a tag, but everything that's gone on post-pandemic. And I'm optimistic by nature, but I still think we have like so much to do here, especially in Wales. I find Wales like probably has the most conservative attitudes towards, I say black and brown. I wouldn't say creativity, that's just one aspect of it, but just black and brown expression across the board, you know, and yeah. So all the resources are kind of going to us at the minute, but is it like sincere? You know, do they fully trust, you know, the black and brown creativity, or is it with condition? And for me, from what we've experienced, it's with condition. But, you know, I'm optimistic, I said.
So we want to see a situation with those conditions where it's not just something that's done perhaps on a surface level.
It's very surface right now,
Yeah.
and it's very necessary, because I think we were talking about culture just in a previous question, right? And do you know what we're living like almost like in a social experiment where there's different communities living alongside each other, right? Yemeni, Afro-Caribbean, Somali. That's a social experiment in Butetown, if you think about it. These communities have their own heritage, their own history, but they've never lived alongside each other. Unless there was an Afghan and Somali community living together. Can you just imagine like the exchange of culture just in that one situation? You know, you can never have it. So there's pros and cons to the situation, but I think there's a lot of pros of people from different communities living with each other, and the resources, there needs to be more, because I think if there's, you know, more of an allocation of resources, just greater achievements will happen. I'll benefit everybody.
And Nirushan, obviously with Butetown Matters, that's probably chimes with your experience as well in terms of resources and...
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I think first we have to look at what culture means. I think for all of us in this room, we just watched that film. We know it's ordinary. We know it's about people. We know it's about communities. It's nothing to do with one facet of where it's about arts or theatre or this kind of thing. We understand it's lots of different things, and everyone has their own unique stories and perspectives. But the reason, and my answer to that question is, yes, it is dominated by certain people, certain groups and organizations, because they control the narrative of what culture is and how it's defined. Now, that doesn't necessarily reflect of what people want culture to be or what it is, or telling their own unique stories. You know, we're talking about where resources are diverted into people that have been there a long time, know how to get access to funding, know how to get access to money, have the training and support and resources needed to be able to go to those applications, put things forward. But if you don't have any of that, if you live in the community like we do, and want to tell your own story and perspective, where do you go? I think your first point of call is those people who are dominating that narrative around what culture is. So I think, you know, when you have a situation like that where people are excluded from decision-making processes, because that's part of culture, this culture that someone decides how much money certain groups are going to get, how much money an individual, an artist is going to get to tell their story. That's culture, and that's something wrong within our society, which I see, because people around that table making those decisions, are they truly reflective and representative of the stories that we're trying to tell, the perspectives that we're trying to bring forward? So I think, you know, for us to think about culture and why it is unequal and why our resources so, hold up in certain places, is because you have to ask yourself, if you are in that position, are you willing to, bring other people to that table? Are you willing to engage truthfully and honestly? I think, one, you have to take responsibility why it took us, this long to even talk about certain cultures and perspectives. I think, how often do you see people from Somali backgrounds, from South Asian backgrounds, from, different parts of the world who live in the Cardiff South as the main headline event, the main artist, the main performer, the main story? Never, almost never. They either you get them in last minute and are on the fringes, or something, it's a sideline. It's something people don't want to see because it's not part of our culture. But that's not true. That's because it's dominated by people who know how to utilize resources and get access to that support. So I think, we have a long way to go, and I think it is positively changing in the direction as a result of the things that we talked about around the Black Lives Matter protests and other movements and other people at the table. But I think we have a long way to go to make sure, those tables are truly representative and reflective, because until that's changed, no other stories or unique identities or perspectives from our community is going to be told. You have to be at that table before change happens on a wider scale.
Brilliant. And Kiara, you've spoke in the, about your own experience with Valley's Kids and the brilliant work that Valley's Kids are doing to try and bring to the table different experiences and culture. Does any of this chime with you? And also, colleagues at the panels have said about these obstacles, for culture, whether it's deep-seated conservative or racist attitudes with the people who are meant to be supporting our culture.
Yeah, I think I can agree with everyone saying that it is obstacles in the way and that it is challenging and that it is dominated. But I've seen breakthroughs so much in the last 6 months. Like, I always used to be a big believer in, like, if I had to make a career, I'd have to go to Cardiff, or I'd have to go to London, or I'd have to go to Manchester or wherever. I'd have to go somewhere other than where I grew up. And actually, it's very much changed for me in the last 6 months. The Wales Millennium Centre have a partnership with Valley's Kids called Together Stronger, and it's about the Wales Millennium Centre taking ownership and saying we need to learn from a community how to be a community and like how to have young people involved within the process. So that's been going on for the last 2 years, and there's been some real significant change with young people being able to come here this weekend, a part of Festival of Voice, and be able to perform in a theatre they've never performed in before, see people they've never seen before, and get treated like real artists. But then, like, also about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I came to watch The Boy with Two Hearts. There'd never probably been a performance here of that much culture and that much different culture than a normal, traditional West End performance. So I've definitely seen major breakthroughs, and I think there's more to come. And we are going in the right way, and it's just about how do we, again, open that up and access that. But I've definitely seen within the last 6 months massive changes, and change in my own opinion of Cardiff. There's been so many breakthroughs, and I'm just extremely proud to be in the room of these young people and seeing The Boy with Two Hearts and getting to witness that story and seeing the Wales Millennium Centre changing their values and really getting to grips with how they need to work with communities and young people and how to access Butetown and everything like that. So it's great that they're doing it, and I think it's just going to continue to develop with the youth collective. So
yeah, more of that. And I was lucky enough to see The Boy with Two Hearts as well, and every school child in Wales should get the opportunity to see that fantastic production. We talk about Cardiff as a city and as its own identity and its problems. Amber, with your work with Push, you certainly had some obstacles when it comes to, having culture and art in the city.
Yeah, so the Push project that I was a part of, it was my first major project, and it was amazing working on it. It was so great to be able to work with other working class artists and also other artists of colour, because I've not had that opportunity before. But it was a real shame because they got washed off, which is great, in a communication error. And yeah, it was quite devastating. But
can we hope tentatively that there might be more?
Well, the funders for Cardiff have announced that they're going to fund another project next year for the people who have lost the murals, but we've had some amazing organisations contact us who want to work with specifically emerging POC artists, which is really nice, and it's a lot of giving a lot of gratification.
So in a way, we kind of need to learn from good examples like that and best practice. And with you, when you said, about issues doing these projects here in Wales and Cardiff in particular, I mean, if there are people from the planning committee of Cardiff Council sitting in the audience here, I'm not sure, but what would...
I don't recognise no faces, but...
Everybody's got masks on, so... what take-home messages can we give to try and make sure that, artists, particularly artists of colour or working class artists, aren't used, but they are part of the change from within?
The thing is, right, with a lot of these things, I think it's extremely obvious, right? It's, basic logic, right? A lot of these projects, like the one Amber was just mentioning, right? That was in an area of the city centre which was run down, which was in a state of disrepair. They brightened up the place, right? And it wasn't just people, artists of colour. It was the fact that they were creating work that significantly, restored an area. And I remember, even going through that area of the city centre, and usually I'll never go through that area, but I diverted whatever commute I was taking for that area because it uplifted me, right? And I was explaining to somebody that their art it must have contributed to somebody's or other people's mental health, right? You're in an extremely rundown city centre, and then you just have a splash of colour, a splash of expression, warmth, and it was just incredible. And then for it to get washed off it's problematic, and whichever way you want to look at it. And in regards to your question, what was your question again? I go off on tangents. What was your question again?
Well, in a way, I don't think I even asked a question. I'm trying to think, is there some kind of common culture that we can get behind and celebrate?
I remember your question now. There needs to be a little bit more trust.
Yeah.
There needs to be less red tape. There needs to be a little bit more ambition with the thinking, because I just think first, this is a capital. I think this is what we forget, right? Wales is a capital, right? And in comparison to other cities, which, again, just only our circumstances that I've had a chance to just compare it to other cities, right? When you go too far, for example, Bristol. If you compare Bristol and Cardiff, right? It's completely two different environments, right? And there's only I've debated with other people, with my friends and stuff, what the reason is, what's the underlying reason. I just think here in Cardiff, right, with organisations like the Arts Council Wales and stuff, there's so much caution on every decision-making process, which just leads to red tape, bureaucracy, or whatever else you want to call it. There needs to be, people who are in those positions who have a bit of vision, who are not scared of embracing ideas which, sit outside of their own personal taste, The world is just evolving at a rapid rate. I'm not sure people understand that. We're going through remarkable times, and the energy here in Cardiff is definitely not in sync with that. Especially organizations like the Arts Council Wales. So somebody on the panel just mentioned about The Boy with Two Hearts. Great production, right? But for it to happen in 2021, right? If you go into other cities and other spaces, right? That's their bread and butter. And this is a cultural institution it's building, and it needs to be, behaving like that almost in a sense, and having more edge drama. The price. Somebody went to me, right? Let me give you an example. What's the name of this place? It's called the Voice of Wales, or what's this entire thing called?
This is the Festival of the Voice at the Wales Millennium Centre.
Brilliant, right? And again, I talk extremely transparently. It's £55 for a ticket. So somebody who works with a lot of young kids said to me, Yusuf, right, it's £55 for a ticket, right? even if you're affluent, right, £55, right, to go to an event like this is extremely significant. So how these working class kids, right, only right behind us, right, in Butetown, meant to, you know, embrace or experience the arts, right? In Glasgow, right, I went to a museum, right? So all the museums were free. So every time I go to a museum, I'd be ready to put my hand in my pocket, right, to give some cash over. And they go, no, 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 it's free. And that takes me back. I was like, wow, it's free. Then I go to another place. It's free. It's free. It's free. And then I just stopped one of the women who's in one of these museums. I said, you know, I come from a place called Cardiff, right? And I can only count maybe like 2 museums which are free. And one's right, like in Kitay City Hall, way out the way. But you guys got, you know, a series of museums which are free, which a kid can just walk into, no restrictions, and experience art that could just shift their thinking. And for something to be priced at £55 in this, you know, economic climate, so to speak, it's an issue. And it's a sort of highlighting of one of the many issues that I have. I might have to pass the microphone. I need a podcast at this point, but it's okay.
No, I think these are really important points. And I think, you know, this crippling lack of confidence that culturally we as a nation seem to be wallowing in might, you know, have perpetuated it in itself, you know, this lack of risk-taking from the institutions. Nirushan, I'm sure that all of this would chime with you. And again, you know, there is a, you know, this is a Raymond Williams event, the dominant culture of the institutions and the arts councils and all of this. But obviously you're very familiar, and so is Bally's Kids, with the culture all around us that perhaps doesn't cost money or isn't a grant-giving necessarily process.
Yeah, I mean, Yusuf made a really important point. I think, you know, all of us on the panel have our own unique identities and stories to tell. But how often would you hear that? If you didn't come today, would you have had a chance to even hear us speak, hear us engage, hear us talk about the talk of culture? And, you know, I'm really grateful for Steph and Tom and the Wales Millennium Centre for having this platform. But this doesn't happen on a regular basis. I think this is something, a unique one-off that happens once a few months, or once, you know, October comes and it's Black History Month, and for some whatever reason, everyone wants to jump on the bandwagon and be like, yeah, we'll do this, this, and this, but we don't want to see you again for another year. So I think you have to really think about how you're investing your time, not just in us, but in our communities, how you're investing in our time in the long term. You know, we're bringing our own identities, our stories, which are of value for lots of different places. You know, we have these incredible things to say and share, but it's not valued. And I think it's a lot to do with people who are in institutions, whether that's, you know, the creative sector, whether that's the political institutions, or whether that's, you know, other sectors where, you know, there are players and factors involved where everyone's terrified in taking that leap, getting something wrong. And it's about moving away from that. It's about taking responsibility in your actions and what who you platform and who you give opportunities to. And I think until you truly reflect within your own institution, within yourself, about who's missing, who we're not talking to, who are we not acknowledging and valuing stories, I think that's the starting point. I think once you start to do that within your own practices, within your institutions, within, you know, the spaces that people are not coming, you have to ask yourself why. Do you have enough people from lots of different backgrounds, from working class backgrounds, from diverse backgrounds, within your board, within your staff, within that team, to be able to say, yeah, look, we really care about this. We do want to hear your story, and we want to appreciate and tell your culture to a vast range of audience rather than a fringe side event. I think, you know, it's time we move past, you know, engaging people just because when it suits them, or because, you know, someone's given them an idea, or it's that time of year. It has to move away from that, and it's really starting to think long term about the benefits about the unique stories and communities that you're not engaging, how you can put resources in, you know, supporting local young artists, community storytellers, how you support them in the long term, not just one event, not just one panel, but in the long term. So, and I think, you know, once you start asking yourself the difficult questions and about are you prepared to invest that resource, and if you are going in the right directions. And if you're not, I would just say, I think it's time that you look at yourself and move aside, because I think we're the ones taking that narrative, and we will continue to take that. You know, all the change of positive impacts that we've seen in the community and in society is not led by institutions, it's led by people and communities. And you know, when we're not seeing what we want and when we're not getting what we want from the institutions that we engage with, we'll take that change ourselves. So I think, you know, there's a lot to work on, and I'm not saying go and trash the Arts Council of Wales or the Millennium Centre or anything like that.
You didn't hear it tonight.
No, I'm not saying anything like that. I'm saying it's about owning your actions and responsibility, especially decision makers in this room. And I think, you know, if you don't have time for it, we will come and we will tell our stories one way or another. And it's about you investing your time at the end of the day. So I think, yeah, that's the way we have to go forwards to, you know, address this lack of engagement from lots of different places and make sure culture is defined by the people, for the people, and for communities to tell their own stories.
That's brilliant. And Kiara, because, you know, there's people talk, you know, in these institutions about something called co-production, and sometimes it's spoken about like a new idea, like this is something we've only just discovered. But of course, you know, it's inherent in how culture is democratically put together, including with Valley's Kids, and the way we saw the clip there, that is also political. It's an expression of political activism for you. Did you want to say anything about that, Kiara?
I don't really know how to follow Nirushan, but I think that's one thing that a lot of people need to get on board with, is like co-creation and like having co-ownership over something is something that Valley's Kids, I feel like I'm always plugging, but it is something that Valley's Kids have always done. They've always made sure that the young people of the groups and the communities are at the centre, and they support them in whatever they want to do. You know, all of that work you saw on the film, it wasn't someone going in and saying, right, we got an invitation to the Festival of Voice, we're going to do this. It was, what would you like to showcase? How would you like to show your community in the Wales Millennium Centre? And they said, we need to talk about all of this. And they were just supported then, like artistically supported to be able to bring it here. So it's always like democratic and political and everything else in Valley's Kids. It's always co-created, and a lot of people could learn a lot from co-creating instead of parachuting in and parachuting out. And I know that's a lot of conversations going on about that, and like having the cultural contract that myself and Nirushan have been talking about. You know, if you want to work in a community and you want to work with the community, who do you need around that table to be able to have everyone's opinion and voices heard? And it's something that I think is developing, but it should have been developed a long time ago, but I'm so glad that it is being developed. And yeah, like there's nothing more that I can really say that other than in my heart I know that there's places that do co-creation and there's places that need to step up. But yeah.
And Cwmni Bro as well, which we saw, you know, that's a fantastic example of a genuine, from the area, just getting on with it in the absence of other type of interventions, which in itself is very powerful. Now, I'm not sure if we've got time. I can't see anybody with clipboards trying to throw us out. So I don't know if anybody of our lovely audience here would like to ask a question. Yes? So, brilliant question. Why at this point in time young people express their issues through culture? I think, Kiara, that's another one for you to answer.
Yeah. I think that it's always been the time, and that it's never, you know, you never move into a time to do it. It's always now and present in the moment. And I think if anything has taught us from this pandemic is that speak up and just get what you want out and don't take no for an answer. Life's too short. You're going to, you know, things will come up and you wish you'd done it sooner. So I think that it's always an urgency for if a young person is wanting to speak to you, you listen. You don't just say, take a back burner and we'll come to you. You make that time. And yeah, I've always been fortunate to have my voice heard, and I know there's a lot of people out there that don't have their voice heard, and that's something that really strikes me, because I can never imagine being the person I am today without my voice being heard. So I know that myself, Valley's Kids, and plenty of other organisations will continue to strive for that, and will continue to listen to young people. And it's just about, if you're in a community and you don't hear that, there's something wrong. Go find out why you aren't hearing it or why you aren't listening, and take that time to listen.
Excellent. Anyone else want to respond to that particular question, Amber? Young people expressing their thoughts and opinions through culture?
I think it's incredibly important, more now than ever, because of social media. I think it's a very important tool in getting messages out there, and also you're able to be exposed to so many different cultures, so many different things going on, that it provides a lot more visibility, and children are the future, so we gotta keep them going, keep them motivated.
You've got to listen to them.
Yeah.
Yusuf, do you share this optimism?
No, there's one person I'm a huge fan of in this audience. That's Colin. Where's Colin? All right. Colin's 82 years of age, right? So I think like art and expression or speaking out, it's not applicable to an age. It's not like, you know, a 16 to 25 slot. It's for everybody, right? Because I remember I was asking Tom, one of the very first things, like, what motivates Colin to be doing this at like 82 years of age, you know? And I just think, again, like I said, it's remarkable times that we're living in, and we need to hear from everyone. Anybody who's got something to say needs to have an avenue or a platform which they can speak and express their ideas or express, you know, their views. And there shouldn't be no restrictions, you know. And I think if we live in a society which enables that, I think it will be a healthier society, and it's a win-win for everybody. So, yeah.
Lovely.
Colin.
Nirushan?
I mean, I definitely agree. I think everyone has their story and expression to say. What I'll say, though, is I think young people have always led telling their identity through culture. I think what's changed is how people see culture and what it's valued as. I think, you know, young people have always, you know, found creative and different ways to make things change so they can be at that space or be able to tell their stories. And it's not always been the case where people who control those things, control the narrative, have been willing to nudge or move aside. But it's young people who take that responsibility, because I think, you know, when you speak to them, they just want to tell their story. They just want to be in spaces. They just want to, you know, engage and have conversations, because it's part of who they are. And I think they don't know anything else. And, you know, unlike people who've been institutionalized in a way where they've been a long time and are unwilling to change, young people are not like that. They'll express in many different ways about who they are and their identity. And I think what, to your question, I think what I would say has changed is, you know, society and how we, you know, have this idea, as Kiara has said, of co-creation and bringing value to voices. And I think young people are not just a side piece anymore where, you know, we have to engage this audience because it says in our strategy or whatever it says, but rather you're actually valuing what they bring to the table. So I think, you know, they've always had that. I think it's just what we're seeing is a shift from institutions to be able to bring them into that space and have their way of expression.
Lovely, thank you. And thank you for that fantastic question. I think maybe we can take one more question if there's a hand. There's a couple of hands there. Yes, sir. I think we all agree with that. And in terms, you mentioned Glasgow, you know, there's the People's Palace Museum in Glasgow, and it tells that story of the working class and how Glasgow was created. This is what attracts people to that fantastic, vibrant city. not maybe this month, but in general terms. And I think, as you said, a museum of military medicine does not inspire as much. And I think, yes, investing in that infrastructure, in buildings, which then are created, and reflect the communities that we're in. I think there's, yeah? Do you want to be pessimistic? What if the institutions never change? I think, yeah, you want to take that?
I was going to ask Rihanna, what do you think we should? I think it's a collective responsibility. I don't think it's for us on the panel to decide what to do, but it's collectively. What are you prepared to do to change institutions? I can't, no matter how much I wanted to change Arts Council of Wales or any institution, I can't do that by myself. We have to do it as a collective. So it's a question for the room about what are you prepared to do to change the culture and structure of institutions, because only collectively can we change it, not individually.
But like myself and Nirushan, we had a conversation with Andrew Ogan, the agent of change, around Kickstart and many other things. And we posed the question, why is it one person? Why isn't there a team? Why isn't there representatives everywhere? And he was like, taken back by that and was like, it should be. So I think that change starts small, but as soon as the ball starts rolling, hopefully it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it takes that one person too. But I understand that like a lot of people get disheartened because something will come around and then get pulled away. But I'm hoping that conversation we had with Andrew, and knowing that he's got a Kickstart placement coming in to be his assistant kind of thing, or another agent of change, will just keep the ball rolling and make people realise that actually the more people involved, the better it's going to get. And it's like Nirushan said, it's collective, and it isn't one person's job to fix anything.
No, and it is true, because, you would think with the sort of overview of time as we've had now in this moment of the centenary of Raymond Williams, we would have had a lot to say about how culture and the idea of culture is ordinary is understood, but perhaps it isn't. Amber, do you want to say anything?
About how is culture ordinary?
Yeah, yes, or in, what Rhiannon said, what if these institutions, whether it's Cardiff City Council or whoever owns the shopping centre in Cardiff, or the Arts Council, if they just don't change fast enough, or they don't change at all?
I guess it is a bit of a difficult one, because like you said, it is sort of ever changing. But I think right now, even though maybe the backing that they're putting behind people of colour, maybe it's tokenism, hopefully that'll push towards further change and inclusion for others.
Any more thoughts, comments, or plans for trips to North Wales that we would like to? But I'm sure the conversations will continue. In 100 years' time, they'll be doing presentations about this very evening and Rhiannon's comment. Thank you all for coming this evening. Thanks to our brilliant panellists, Kiara, Nirushan, Yusuf, and Amber. Really enjoyed hearing about your work. Thanks to the Wales Millennium Centre and its fantastic technical team. Really grateful. Thank you, Tom and Colin, for putting all of this together. And also thanks, Nick and Stephanie, for your inspirational work. It's just been a privilege to be part of these ongoing conversations, and I look forward to them carrying on. Spread the word. I'm sure there'll be other opportunities to see this film and this event. So keep your eyes peeled on various social media and so forth. And if you have any questions, or if you have any burning plans to continue with this, then you're very welcome to contact me at Literature Wales, lleucu@literaturewales.org, and I'd be happy to pass on your queries and your comments to everybody else here. Diolch yn fawr iawn, noswaith dda i chi gyd.